Hello and good morning. We're here today to present the Southend City Council UK Shared Prosperity Fund. I'm Erica Russell from Russell and Dawson.
And I'm Southend-on-Sea.
This presentation was originally given at a workshop on the 24th of November, which was presented in the library in Southend. We have made a few small changes to it based on some of the questions that were asked, and also now confirmation that the government has approved the investment plan for Southend. So there are a few small changes which I'll point out as we go through. The presentation is very much about giving you some background information on the fund, but it also takes you through the application process and the application form, which we hope you'll find useful. Okay, so we'll give you a little bit of the background on the funding. We'll look at the structure of the fund, the allocations and the output summary. We'll give you the timeline for applications, which is now also up on the website, and the application form, and a little bit of thinking about your project. This gives you some of the background. It gives you an idea that the fund itself is over 3 years, which is the way that the government has structured it. And you can see here that much of that is actually in year 3, 24 to 25. The guidance from government as it stands at the moment is that funding needs to be spent in each of the financial years and doesn't carry over. The work that was done prior to the investment, Southend City Council did a lot of work talking to local partnerships, running groups, and have to look at this across the whole of the funding landscape. So there can't be any repetitive funding here. So you'll see that they try to select things where there are gaps in funding at the moment. It is very much part of the government's levelling up agenda. So the UKSPF fund sits within that. And it's very much there to build pride in place, and they're looking to increase life chances. As you can see, there is an overarching goal that government has put in place that sits across the whole of the Levelling Up Fund, and this programme needs to sit within that. So we're thinking about it as you actually think about your project. UKSPF has been separated into 3 investment priorities: communities in place, supporting local business, people and skills. And your project will have to fit within one of those investment priorities. We would really recommend that you have a look at the UKSPF prospectus. It's available online and it gives you much more detail about the way that the fund is structured. And we'll come on to it a little bit later, but there's also a very good and useful document about the outputs and outcomes that each project will be expected to deliver as well. Here we have the timeline, which was draft when we did the workshop originally. It's now been updated, as you can see here. The call actually was put out on Friday, the 16th of December. And you can see here that we're suggesting we will get all of this through and hopefully in place by the 20th of February. There are some tight deadlines to work to, and we will be asking for draft applications to be submitted for support and technical review by the 6th of January. And this is a mandatory requirement to help give you that support to make sure everything's pulled together in time for that final application on the 20th of the 1st. Very worthwhile before you start writing anything is to spend a little bit of time thinking about, is the UKSPF fund the right one for you and your project? For the first 2 years, only 2 of the investment priorities will be available, and this is because government is looking at people and skills in year 3 only. So here we have the communities in place supporting local business, and you will see that there are 2 separate interventions that Southend has selected. So E9, impactful volunteering within communities in place, and supporting local business, E23, strengthening local entrepreneurial ecosystems. Your project will need to fit within these 2 different concepts. And there are examples there that government have provided of what these might look like. In addition to that, each project will have to achieve at least 1 output and 1 outcome for the theme that you've selected. And here we have just highlighted the outputs and outcomes that are available, that have been chosen. And again, we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, and certainly the guidance gives you much more information about what these actually mean, and you do need to check that. It also gives you guidance on how to evidence this as well, because you will have to do that. So how do you develop your UKSPF project? Well, firstly, you will need to be an organisation to apply. You can't apply as an individual. The fund will give you between £15,000 and £60,000 of grant per project. And of course, you can bring in match funding to make that a bigger project. That's absolutely fine. And it is possible that you might be using the UKSPF fund to actually match to another grant programme. And again, that's perfectly fine. There will be a mandatory review of your application form, and the final application will be reviewed by a grant panel comprised of Southend City Council and up to 5 local stakeholders. This gives you a little bit of an idea of the type of allocations that are available, and you can see that only communities in place and local business have funding for the first 2 years of the programme. Most of this is for revenue. There is a small percentage as capital, and these figures do include a small admin cost for the lead authority, but it gives you an idea of the kinds of funding that will be around. A lot of information on this slide. We're not going to sort of dwell on it, but it's there for you to go back to and have a look. We also thought it would be useful for you to be able to see the different levels of outputs and outcomes that the whole programme will need to achieve in Southend. So again, when you're thinking about putting your project together, worth going back and having a look at these figures, and you get an idea of the scale that you need to be working to. When you come to look at the application form, the first thing you will need to do is to put down your project proposal. There's a 1,000-word maximum. And what we want to do is we want to know where it will be delivered, what you'll be doing, who it's aimed at, and how you'll deliver it. It's really important that you think about how that fits with what the UKSPF fund is looking for. So if you're thinking about your delivery, does that tie into your budgets? Does it fit with the outputs and outcomes? It all needs to work together here. If you're looking at developing a partnership, which is absolutely fine, what you will need to do is show what each of the partners within the partnership would be doing, not just an overarching sort of general sort of commentary. And there would need to be one lead partner who would be the person who would provide the sort of quarterly reports and manage the budgets and claims as well. Really important, how do you know that the community need or want the project? We really need to see that when we're looking at the application. It's something that the stakeholder panel will be looking at. What sort of engagement have you done? How do you know that the need is there? So again, please do think about that and make sure you build it in. It would also be very helpful to understand your organisation's experience in delivering similar types of projects. This is really just to help us understand your capacity and experience in how to deliver, something where you're going to have to be managing budgets, you're going to have to be managing the administration and claims as well. The UK government and Southend City Council are obviously committed to equality and diversity, and you will need to show how your project will be doing this, not just within your own organisation, but when you're thinking about the delivery of the programme as well. How will your project operate sustainably? Increasingly important that we look at how we have impacts on climate. So how are you looking to minimise your carbon emissions, again, as part of the project itself or its delivery? How will you ensure the project is sustainable and has a legacy past initial delivery? So this is tricky, we know this is difficult, but if you can include information on how you're thinking about that, it could be that it's volunteers who continue it afterwards. And the final thing here is, how do you set up your project to think about the risks? So if you're awarded the funding, what sort of risks do you think the project could have in its delivery? And most importantly, also, how are you going to mitigate those? When you're thinking about the project and the time that it will take to deliver, please do remember that you will need to think about the outputs and outcomes, and you need to put in the numbers that you think you will achieve. And these will form part of the monitoring system that will be undertaken. So each quarter, you will be asked to update on your outputs and outcomes, as well as your financial performance, your financial claims. And at the end of the project, there will be a final summary report. Do you have the admin time and capacity to do this? And how are you going to explain that? And that needs to be something that you feel very comfortable that you can achieve. So think about that, perhaps discuss it as a group as well. We need to know what the key milestones are in your project. And again, this will form part of the reporting. So here we've got project setup and then delivery of, and obviously you can add lines and just complete that so that you have as many as you want. But remember, you will report on each one. So, think about sensibly how you want to do it. And now I'll hand over to Selen to just have a little bit of a chat about the budget.
So the first thing to know about this, about the budget, is that you will have to go and fill in the Excel spreadsheet first. The Excel spreadsheet is shown on the screen here on the top right corner. And we will go through the lines so that you can we can make sure that you know what you're writing in there. So you can see on column A, this is your budget line. So you will need to use the drop down list in order to select what your cost is. For instance, you've got staff costs. This is anyone that you've got a contract of employment with or that you will recruit in the future. Supplier of goods. This is, for instance, it could be small stationery. It could be that you have to purchase something that is small and therefore you need to put it under this line. Small equipment, this is, for instance, a laptop, a computer, a printer that is needed, and that should be always under £10,000 each. Capital cost is when you need equipment that is over £10,000. Supplier of services, this is when you have to contract someone to deliver a consultancy, to deliver a workshop, business support, anything that will be a service to be procured. In column B, you will describe your expenditures. For instance, if your budget line is staff cost, for each member of staff of your team, you will need to include their job title, the number of hours per week, or maybe the full-time equivalent. What I would advise as well is for partnerships, if you want to apply as a partnership, in here you will need to say which partner this budget line belongs to. So you will put the name of the organization, then you will describe the organization, the expenditure. In column C, D, E, F, and G, these are your costs per quarters. And you will just include, without decimals, we just want round numbers, you will include how much of this budget line you will have to spend in each of the quarter. Once you've filled in this first table, you will have a summary table that will be produced automatically within the spreadsheet. You will just use this information in order to fill in the table, which is on the bottom left here on the screen, and which is in your Word application form. This is the question 13 is the match funding. So this is not a requirement for this funding, but we would want to know if you are bringing match funding to this project, and therefore whether you've already applied and you've got confirmation, you put the amount in there, or if you're going to apply in the future, you can let us know as well. And very important as well, are you going to use the UKSPF funding if you're successful to match another program, which would be maybe a bigger program. Do not hesitate to fill in the additional comments to provide any information you might want to add and you might find useful. Question 14, this is about procurement. With this fund, if you get approved, there will be some requirements linked to procurement. Whether you're a private organization or you've got your own limits, the limits of the fund or the more restrictive limits, if your limits are more restrictive, you need to use them. But if not, you would have to use the ones from the fund, which is under 2,400 and £99, you can do a direct award. You just need one quote, and then you can award the contract. Between 2,500 to 24,999, you will have to request 3 quotations in order to select the person you want to contract, or in order to purchase goods and services. Over £25,000, then it becomes a formal tender. All of this guidance is in the FAQ, so don't worry, you will be able to access them before you fill in this question. Next step, so if you have any queries, you can look at the UKSPF FAQs. Otherwise, you can also email or phone to these details here on the screen. Any questions, do not hesitate, because it will help as well to update the FAQs all the time. Don't forget to always check that you are using the latest version of the application form, because there may be changes. We may provide more information as well on other documents. Thank you very much.